I've sat through a lot of uncomfortable conversations in my life, but nothing prepared me for what my wife said in that therapist's office on a Thursday afternoon in March. "You're the biggest disappointment of my life." She said it with such certainty, such finality that even Dr. Sterling shifted in her chair. My wife wasn't done. She leaned forward, voice building like a freight train. "I've wasted 8 years of my life believing you'd change. I believed you'd become the man I needed, but you're just pathetic." The silence that followed felt heavy. Dr. Sterling cleared her throat, probably rehearsing a therapeutic intervention. But before she could speak, I did something that surprised everyone, including me. I smiled. Not a bitter smile, not sarcastic. A small, quietly relieved smile. Then I said 4 words that changed everything. "I can't argue with that." My wife's mouth dropped open. She'd clearly expected tears, begging, or at least some defensive pushback. Instead, I leaned back and continued, calm, measured. "You know what? You're absolutely right. I have been a disappointment to you. And I'm about to disappoint you one final time." She laughed, sharp and incredulous. "What does that mean?" "I'm leaving," I said. She scoffed, the kind of laugh that said this was another empty threat. We'd been here before. Arguments, ultimatums, temporary separations that always ended with me coming back, tail between my legs, promising to try harder. "Not this time. You always say that," she rolled her eyes. "But you never actually do anything because you're too weak." That stopped her cold. Dr. Sterling started taking notes. She thought she was watching a breakthrough. She didn't know she was watching the controlled demolition of an 8-year marriage. "What do you mean you already did?" my wife asked, voice losing some of its venom, replaced by something I hadn't heard in a long time. "Uncertainty. I filed the papers 3 weeks ago," I said. "I moved my things out yesterday while you were at your sister's. I opened my own bank account last month. I've been preparing for this conversation for a long time." Color drained from her face. "You're bluffing," she whispered. I pulled out my phone and showed her the confirmation email from Morrison and Associates. She stared at it as if the letters themselves were proof of some betrayal. Turns out, when you spend years telling someone they're worthless, eventually they start to believe one thing for themselves. They deserve better. Dr. Sterling finally found her voice. "Perhaps we should take a step back," she offered. "No need," I said, standing up. This session just became very productive. She got to say everything she'd been holding back, and I got the clarity I needed. My wife looked at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. The man who had spent years walking on eggshells, who had absorbed every criticism, who had accepted blame for problems that weren't his. That version of me had been slowly dying for months. "You can't just leave," she said, smaller now. "We can work this out. That's what therapy is for. You just told a licensed professional that I'm the biggest disappointment of your life." "You didn't say you disappointed me in some way," I replied. "You said I, as a person, am your biggest disappointment. Period." I looked at Dr. Sterling. "Do you have a lot of success stories that start with one spouse declaring the other a complete disappointment?" Her diplomatic non-answer spoke volumes. 8 years, I said, looking back at my wife. 8 years of trying to be someone I'm not. 8 years of my efforts being minimized, my feelings dismissed, my self-worth chipped away. You want to know what's disappointing? That it took me this long to realize the problem wasn't that I was disappointing you. The problem was that I kept trying to be the person you wanted, even when it destroyed myself. Her eyes filled with tears, but they looked more like panic than sorrow. "I didn't mean it the way it sounded," she insisted. "Yes, you did," I replied. "And frankly, I respect you more for saying it than I would if you tried to take it back now. At least you were honest." I gathered my jacket and headed for the door. Dr. Sterling cleared her throat. "I'd like to schedule individual sessions with both of you." "Good idea," I said. "My wife clearly has things to work through. As for me, I just had the most productive therapy session of my life." I paused at the door and looked at her once more. She was crying now, genuine tears mixing with dawning comprehension. "For what it's worth," I said quietly, "I hope someday you find someone who doesn't disappoint you. And I hope I find someone who doesn't see loving me as a burden." She called my name, voice cracking in desperation. I didn't turn. I had already given fair warning. I was about to disappoint her one final time. My phone started ringing before I reached the parking lot. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again and again. By the time I reached my car, a 2015 Honda I'd bought with money I earned, there were 6 missed calls and 3 texts. The first preview read, "Please come back inside so we can—" I didn't bother finishing it. The drive to my friend Carson's place gave me 20 minutes to think. Home wasn't our house anymore. I meant what I said about moving my things out. 3 months of careful planning had led to this moment. Every weekend she spent at her sister's. Every evening she worked late, all quiet opportunities for me to prepare. Carson had offered his spare room back in January. He didn't believe I'd go through with it. "How'd it go?" he asked as I opened his door. "About as well as you'd expect when someone calls you their biggest disappointment in front of a therapist," I said. He winced. My phone buzzed. 12 missed calls in 30 minutes. "That's got to be some kind of record," he said. "She's probably still in shock. So what happens now?" he asked. I sat, cracked open a beer, and explained the strategy. I'd timed the filing. Our joint checking, which she controlled, now had only her half of the shared expenses for the next 2 months. My half was in an account she didn't know existed. I'd spoken to the landlord. My name was coming off the lease at month's end. She could keep the place, but she'd need to qualify on her income alone. Carson read something on his laptop, but listened. "You know she'll try to make your life hell, right?" "Let her," I said. Now I don't have to pretend it's normal. The messages kept coming. "At first reasonable, can we talk?" By early morning, they moved through bargaining. "I'll do therapy alone." To anger. "You're destroying our marriage." And then desperation. "Please don't do this. I love you." I deleted them all without responding. The most telling reactions came from others. Her family mobilized. Guilt from her mom, logic from her sister, emotional appeals from friends. But a message that made me pause came from an unexpected source, my coworker, Janet. She simply wrote, "Good for you. That woman's been treating you like garbage for years." I kept that message. My lawyer, Morrison, called at 9. "Her lawyer called this morning," he said. "They hired someone overnight. They want mediation immediately. They were trying to move fast, hoping to catch me before the process had time to breathe." I'd had 3 months to think. I wasn't changing my mind. I ventured out for groceries the next day and ran into Kelly, my wife's best friend. She confronted me in the cereal aisle, indignation painted across her face. "You overreacted to one comment," she told me. This was one thing. "One comment?" I asked. "How many times over the last year have you heard her criticize me in public? How many dinners where she made jokes about my job, my friends, my appearance? When was the last time she said something genuinely nice about me?" Kelly's expression shifted. She searched her memory and came up empty. That silence told me everything. I paid for groceries, and as I walked out, she called after me. "She really does love you, you know." "If calling me your biggest disappointment is love," I said, "then I finally understand why I've been unhappy." The weeks that followed taught me a lot. Dr. Sterling called me for an individual session. She told me what she'd observed: contempt. Not just disagreement or frustration, but a chronic, corrosive contempt. The eye-rolling, the interruptions, the dismissive comments. She'd counted it. 0 genuine compliments in 6 sessions, but 17 instances of criticism, dismissal, or mockery. 17. And that was with a neutral observer present. "I'm concerned about her reaction to your decision," Dr. Sterling said. "I met with her yesterday. She asked me to try to get you to come back." "And what did you tell her?" I asked. "That therapy can't rebuild a foundation that never existed," she said. "Respect has to be mutual." I also told her something else. That when you leave because someone believed you were worthless for years, that's not an impulsive reaction. It's self-respect. After that, some family members reached out differently. Her sister texted, "I owe you an apology." Kelly admitted she couldn't remember the last real compliment. A cousin from Phoenix sent a message saying, "You seem like a good guy. Hope you find someone who appreciates that." My wife tried one last time. She came back to Dr. Sterling, asking for help to get me back. Dr. Sterling told me what she said. She'd be more careful about tone. She'd try not to criticize in public. When asked whether she recognized deeper issues, she blamed my sensitivity. Even then, she saw the problem as my reaction, not her behavior. A month later, Dr. Sterling called again. "I won't be continuing therapy with her," she said. "She's not ready to accept responsibility." Without that acknowledgement, therapy is counterproductive. I remember reading a text from my ex weeks later. "I really was your biggest disappointment, wasn't I?" I stared at it a long time before replying, "No, you weren't my disappointment. You were my lesson." 6 months after that Thursday in Dr. Sterling's office, I was sitting in my own apartment. The divorce had been finalized 2 weeks earlier. I'd reconnected with friends. I'd started going to the gym. I'd even had coffee with someone from work. Nothing serious, just a reminder that conversation doesn't have to come with criticism. My ex moved back in with her parents. She told people I'd abandoned her. The narrative shifted. But those who'd actually watched our relationship knew a different story. One night, an unknown number messaged me. "I got a new phone. I wanted you to know I understand now what Dr. Sterling meant. I really was your biggest disappointment, wasn't I?" I typed slowly, "No, you were my lesson. I deserve someone who sees the best in me, not someone convinced I'm fundamentally flawed." 3 dots appeared and faded. Finally, I hope you find that. I already had. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to let someone treat you badly. And sometimes, the most painful, most liberating disappointment you can give a person is to stop letting them define your worth. The disappointment, it turned out, was entirely worth it.